welcome. One more. Oh, can I just say, I've
Yeah.
actually I've got a free ebook, and I've put it in the chat as well. So it's a book of inspiration. It's just affirmations. That's what it is. So it's a free book. So it's on the chat as well, if you would
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
thank you.
keep an eye on the chat presenters. Please post your contact details into the chat, because we've got over 200 people on the platform and they're going to want to hook up because you guys have got some good food, some good, inspirational, things to share with all of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Brilliant. So moving on, we have got the fantastic Hugh Mayers, psychotherapist, relationship coach, mental health trainer. Where are you, Hugh?
I'm here.
You're here, you're here, you're here.
I'm here. I'm here.
We have a man. Most weeks it's just ladies, just queens. It's fantastic to have you on the platform. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me, Joanne. Thank you for having me. It's really intrigued. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Probably more so the questions and answers, the passa when it kind of warms up a little bit. But I think I'll just put something out into the atmosphere just for a bit of food for thought, so to speak. Yvonne spoke brilliantly about attachment theory, and funny enough, not attachment theory, about the love languages from Gary Chapman. And it was one of those things that I often talk about and weave into my podcast. I have a podcast on YouTube called It Takes Two, and it's a relationship show. So as a psychotherapist and a relationship coach, the love business, they call me the love guru as a form of banter, some of my friends. And we talk about the love languages quite a lot. And I did have something prepared to go into, so I'm gonna have to hit it from another angle, because it's like Yvonne had kind of touched on a lot of things that I wanted to speak about regarding the love languages. But let's think about relationships, about love. Let's start from the beginning. When we are looking for relationships, or when we're moving towards marriage, or even thinking or considering meeting that special person, are we being intentional when we're in this process? And what do I mean by that? I mean that, do we meet people in, and this is again from a non-judgmental point of view, but just being descriptive, not prescriptive. Do we meet people in hookups and casual affairs, or casual interactions, or we're not sure what we want, but we kind of getting intimate with somebody, getting sexual with somebody, and we kind of drift into are we steady now? Are we exclusive? We have all these kind of new words coming up because we're dating and we're not sure about the status of the relationship, and hoping that it evolves into something serious and something monogamous, something committed. Or are we being quite intentional in the sense of, are we quite clear about where we are in our life and what we want out of a relationship? So when we meet somebody and we're, let's say we're doing the interview, we can be honest with first ourselves about what we want, and two, we can be honest with that person. So say, for example, somebody is looking for an exclusive, a man or a woman is looking for an exclusive relationship, looking for marriage. Ultimately, I want to be married in 18 months, but they're on a first date or a second date and they're having a conversation with that person, they're chopping it up. Are they comfortable in actually putting that out there into the atmosphere and actually letting that person know? Or are we thinking, I feel a little bit vulnerable, I feel like I might scare them off, I feel like I might push them away because this is possibly not what that person's looking for? But it might make sense to actually, one, be honest to ourselves, and also be honest to that person, because with wealth, we can always lose our money and get our money back. But with time is something that we ain't gonna get back. And to be honest, what is the point in engaging with somebody, hoping that at some point they're going to want the same thing that you want? Isn't it better to put it out there into the atmosphere that this is what I'm looking for? And if it's so-called scares them off, then this is the what you would call it, the cleansing process. You're just getting rid of time wasters, or moving on to making space so you can connect with that person that wants the same thing that you want. So one of the first things I think we have to consider is our state of mind in terms of intentionality. Are we quite clear with ourselves, honest to ourselves, aware of what we want, and willing to put that out there and operate within that space of letting people know this is what I'm looking for? So if we don't attract that person, or let me put it this way: if there's that person that we find physically attractive, but they don't want what we want, are we okay with saying bye-bye, or are we going to waste our time and waste their time hoping that we can get them to conform to our program? So that's the first thing about intentionality. The second thing as well is fitness for purpose. What level of self-awareness do we bring to the table in terms of dealing with our unresolved past? Because we all got history. We're all products to a large degree of the experiences that we've had. But can we come to a new relationship without the baggage, without the unresolved issues, without the, let me put it this way. Life comes out of, like they say that they get the living from the dead and the dead from the living. So let me break that down. So even with, for example, in the natural world, a fruit will die, a fruit will decompose, but out of that fruit decomposing, and a new fruit can be born out of that. So it's almost like we've been through certain negative experiences. We've been charred, we've been put through the mill, possibly difficult stuff in relationships. Everybody got their horror story, and most people that you speak to, most adults you can speak to, if you really open them up, they can give you a catalog of the injustices that they've experienced at the hands of a significant other in their past. However, when we use these terms, sometimes I'm even concerned about words from psychology that get into public speak when they start, people start to say, he was toxic, she was toxic, and narcissism, and this person was a narcissist. These are easy labels, right, to employ, because what does that do? We rob ourselves when we use these labels, because when we refer to that person as a narcissist, what does it tell us about the relationship? It means that implicitly, this person has some sort of psychological disorder or some kind of condition. Everything that went wrong was basically their fault. I don't really need any self-exploration, or there's no growth, there's no potential of growth, because I was just a victim at the hands of this person. But as human beings, men and women, young or old, black or white, we all have agency. We all have a certain level of choices that we make, and sometimes we make the wrong choices, and we have to live with that. And that's the beauty of this journey, this human journey called life, that we have free will, we have choices. I was really listening keenly, especially to Brother Joe, when he was breaking down about the food and the type of food, how the food influences how we think. But sometimes it's a way that we think that influences the kind of food that we eat. So it's all interrelated. Now, let's talk a little bit about self-awareness. So we're talking about out of that devastation or out of that negative past, how do we resolve some of those unresolved issues? How do we look into the cupboard? How do we look into that dark room, that fearful place about some of our insecurities and some of those things that we've been through? Now, that might mean entering into therapy. That might mean doing a particular self-awareness course, or going on a certain quest. It might be really literature. It might be a spiritual journey, however you get there. But there's going to be a need for some sort of cleansing, so that you can come to the table, not perfect, but you can come to the table, let's say, somewhat resolved and aware of your issues and aware of your fragility or your soft spots, so that when you meet that person, that this is something that when you're building, you can put that into the mix. Now, if for example, a man and woman meet, and none of us are perfect, but I know, okay, I had a difficult past growing up with my mum. I know, for example, that I've got attachment issues. I didn't really get that sensitive care because I was sent to England from the Caribbean, and my mum left me and came to England first, and so I grew up without that tender care in those years. And there's always something about me being a bit vulnerable, and always something about me being quote unquote needy. Maybe my love language is touch, and I need that extra affection, that extra cuddle. I need to feel connected to the woman that I'm with, for example. That's a vulnerability, but naming it and being able to communicate that to the woman that you're planning to build with, that, again, you're not perfect, but she is aware of where you're coming from, so she knows how to support you, or she knows I can work with that, or that's totally different to my love language, and I don't think this thing is going to work. So it's about being aware. It's about being confident and congruent enough to put it out there when you're sitting down and chopping it up with that significant person. And when I say that as well, it's not everything is for everybody. So maybe when we first meet people and we're kind of navigating them, there's certain informations, like an onion, we're peeling off layers about what we're willing to reveal. And as this person shows us a part of them and we build up a level of trust, and we can reveal more and more. But I think that it's really important that people can be psychologically intimate before they get physically intimate. Because I think what happens now oftentimes is that people fall into sex and then try to figure out after sex, do you know what, let me try and find out to get to know this person. And it can be very awkward. People describe this as like a very awkward process. You've already been there, as they say, you've already been there now. And then you're trying to figure out who this person is. Or sometimes you got that sexual connection, and so you try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Oh, the sex was so great, so can I just make this the right person for me? Because that would kind of, as opposed to meeting the right person and then perfecting the sex, which can be worked on. We sometimes are a little bit guilty of doing it the other way around. So that's something to bear in mind. Also, speaking, I know it's a platform full of women, so I have to, I guess, speak on behalf of the fellas and say, what do the men want? I can't speak for all men, but I can definitely speak from research, from clinical practice, from the barbershop, from the basketball locker room talk. To a large degree, apart from femininity and cooperation, what do Black men in particular seem to want? The word on the street, the word on the wire, they want more sex and less conflict. Now, let me break that down, because that might sound trivial. That might sound like, is that the hypersexual Black masculine man again lurking at our door? No. There's a difference between somebody who's a sex addict and somebody who has a healthy sex drive. And I think in the current climate that we live in terms of like the political landscape and political correctness and how people are allowed to articulate themselves and what we're really allowed to say, a lot of men are kind of afraid of being cancelled. So we learn how to navigate and say polite words and be very self-censoring around our female counterparts, women, in terms of, you know, the fear of offending. So this is a truth hour. So don't touch that dial. I'm going to just give it to you hot, drop it like it's hot, as they say. Men essentially want a big part of it, apart from cooperation, which is very big. They want more sex and less conflict, less a peaceful life. Now, let me just chop that up a little bit and link it back to the love languages. As Yvonne mentioned, love languages, you know, words of affirmation, nice words of affirmation, words, inspiring words, you know, like quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, physical touch. So while people sometimes say sex isn't love, well, let's it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. For many people, sex isn't love. Or for heterosexual men do have that capacity, many men, should I say, have that capacity to be very divorced, to cut off a side of their almost their psyche and be very sexual, be very promiscuous with women and have no emotional, no spiritual, no psychological consequences. It was purely a physical act. Yeah, men are very good at that. Men are very good at that. Wired almost to be that way in some respects. However, when it comes to sex with the woman that they love, the woman that they have put on a pedestal in their mind and in their heart, sex now carries a different symbolic meaning. And also rejection carries a different symbolic meaning. So when a man is living when a woman shuts up shop or is quote unquote miserly, or he's living in a committed monogamous relationship or a marriage, and sex is a problem, yeah, rejection is taking him back to that poverty, or that young boy that was living in a world of lack, and that sex represents love with the woman he loves, and sex represents comfort, and sex represents being nurtured. It's a spiritual act. It's not just a physical act with that woman. So let's say that ultimately we're looking for love. We're looking for a safe haven, and you know that's what we look for in our significant other. So like I mentioned, I wanted to really go into the love languages, but I feel like that was really covered really, really well. So I think I might leave it there, and I think I've put enough into the atmosphere just to get the mouse of the treadmill moving, so that you guys will be thinking about maybe some questions that you can come back at in the questions and answers. And I really look forward to that. But yeah, that's me, as they say. That's me for now.
Thank you so so much, Hugh. That was really, really quite thought-provoking. Yeah, I've made a couple of notes. You know, men want more sex and less conflict. So I'm going to throw it out there. Is it a case that men just want an easy life?
Is that an easy life? Is that a question to me?
That's the question to you. Is it a case that
Oh,
you want an
wow.
easy life?
I thought we was going to do the lap. All right, yeah. So I don't know if that represents an easy life, but it might represent a peaceful life. I think that particularly for Black men living in societies like living in the diaspora, so like the UK, America, places like where there is not just racism, we don't like you, or I don't want to be a friend racism, but structural racism. So, you know, we have to really dig deep with our shovel and our spade to dig down and get oil, or, you know, to get our bread up. And the world outside, the institutions, they're not the most friendly places towards Black people in general. I know there's this thing about where we talk about colorism sometimes, and it's almost as if we live in such a racist society, but Black men get off scot-free because colorism is directed towards dark-skinned women. And no, UK is a racist country, it can be very challenging. So when brothers are out there doing their thing, living in, you know, integrating in society, when they come home, they're looking for a safe haven. They're looking for somewhere to regenerate and somewhere to recharge spiritually, and ultimately to connect with, isn't it? Like, it's about connection. So the love languages is about what gives people connection. So those words of affirmation, for some people, it's those words that give connection. But for other people, the physical act is what gives them connection, and being connected helps them to recharge. So I don't know if it's easy life, but it's more like I think people are, you know, building. I'm building you, and you're building me, and we're working together.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much for that. So guests on the platform, if you have any questions, please pop a few of them into the chat, and we are going to be open for questions